Okay, this next lesson is kind of a technique and like a theory primer to before you start working on the sight reading that goes along with this level, or the single note reading, which is really going to help you make music quick and be able to access a lot of skills that you need to read sheet music. That can be a great skill because it opens the entire world of music to you. Learning how to read sheet music, you can access so much music online now, and it gives you just a wealth of a resource to learn music. Okay, so this first example is a natural note scale. We're going to call it in first position. Now, natural notes, what does that mean? It means we're using all the notes that just have names like A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. No sharps or flats yet, and we'll explain those at a later time. In this lesson, I'll even show you one example of those. And then also, first position. First position is when your first finger is essentially kind of hovering over the first fret, or basically we have access to play the open notes too. So you'll see a lot of these examples have a lot of open notes in the first 4 frets on the guitar or so, if even that many, maybe just the first few. Okay, so let's look at this first example. Let's just trace the notes up one at a time. So what you want to do is we want to learn a few things with this exercise. Number one, what string all these notes are on. And you can use the bottom system of the music for this. This is called tablature, okay? And so the tablature shows you what string and what fret a note is located on. So for instance, the first note that we see in this piece is an E. You can see it written above the note. But look at the tablature. You can see the bottom string, which is actually going to be the string closest to us. A lot of people get that kind of mixed up. So the one that's the lowest on the paper is actually the one that's closest to us, or the biggest string, or the lowest in pitch, you might think of it, right? The lowest string on the thing is the lowest one in pitch, okay? So another thing that you'll see is the location of that note on the treble clef staff. Now, this treble clef is an interesting clef because it tells us where G is, and every line and space is like a different alphabetical order. So when we go up a line or a space, we'll end up going a letter alphabet forward, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. When we go down in the line or a space on the staff, we actually have to go backwards. So like, that would be like, I don't know, like G, F, E, D, C, B, A, or keep on going, G, F, E, D, C, B, A. It's a lot harder to say alphabet backwards than it is forwards, isn't it? So basically, the reason we can say that first note is an E is because the treble clef tells us that the second line from the bottom is a G. That's what they call the treble clef, the G clef. And if we kind of look closely at the treble clef, we can see that it circles that line, or that design goes through that second line more than any other line that it goes to. And that tells us that second line is important, and that's where the G is. And if we were to go down the staff, we would have F in the first space, E on the first line, D, C, and so forth. Now, what you can do is look at the previous video and be sure and work the exercises on the note naming on the musictheory.net exercises. That will really help you gain some fluency and some kind of quick draw for naming these notes. And this exercise will help us find those on the fretboard. Okay, so the 3 notes that we need on the E string, the first 3 notes in this exercise, are E on the open note, F on the first fret, and G on the 3rd fret. So E, F, and G are very important notes. Then we go up to the next string. You see the open note on the second lowest string. And then I have the A open, the B on the 2nd fret, and the C on the 3rd fret. Now notice the next string kind of has the same pattern. We go to the D string, but we have the notes D open, 2nd fret E, and 3rd fret F. Notice it's another one of those open 2, 3 kind of things, right? Now the next string is particularly interesting because we really have 2 notes we want to learn on it. The G, the open G string, the A on the 2nd fret, So just two notes there, G and A. And then the last two strings we have we have B, open B, first fret C, third fret D, and then the highest string we have high E, first fret F, and third fret G. And then we can put all those notes together coming back down the scale. And that's the whole purpose of this exercise, is to kind of get the ordering and the space of these natural notes in first position in order alphabetically, up and down this order. One way I like to practice these is first I want to learn the pattern on the fingerboard. So, I kind of remember like a phone number or some kind of like symmetrical shape. So, I'm thinking, okay, the first string, or the sixth string, the lowest string, is an 0-1-3. And so is the second string, the B string. And they also have an open, a 1 and a 3 on the high E string. So I know that on the biggest string, the low E, and the highest string, the high E, 0-1-3, are the right notes. And then I know the B string is 0-1-3 as well. Then on the A and the D string, I can see clearly that those are 0-2 and a 3. So I'm thinking, okay, when I get on those two strings, those are the three notes I need, open 2 and 3. And then I remember that the G string is just open and 2. So that will help me just conquer the order of the notes as I see them on the tablature. Okay, 0-1-3, then 0-2-3, then 0-2-3. Okay, next string is just 0 and 2. Then I've got 0-1-3 again. When I go backwards, okay, 3-1 and open. Then again, 3-1 open. Then just 2 and open. 3-2 and open. Do that again. 3-1 and open. So that's kind of like the first step, is just finding the right notes. The second step I like to do in that is to be able to do that and say the note names. So they're all in alphabetical order. So if you start on E, when you get the G, E, F, G, you go back to A. Because the musical alphabet is just those 7 letters, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So when you go past G, you go back to A. Or when you go below A, you go forward to G and count backwards, G, F, E, D, right? And so if you just say the alphabet, and you can play that exercise from memory, you can just be like E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E. And then the last way I would practice this is I would look at like the note on the staff and see what line or space it's on, or how many leisure lines it is below the staff, and close my eyes and draw that like with an imaginary like pen and paper in my brain, and play that note, see that it's E, and see that one is 1, 2, 3 leisure lines below the staff on that space. It's below that third leisure line. And then I'm going to see that F, 2 leisure lines below that. And then the G, the space below that, and so forth. So it's kind of like a meditation exercise that you want to do in that kind of exercise. And then lastly, when you really get it together, turn on the metronome on 60 beats a minute. And notice when I'm playing, I play all the bass notes with my thumb. When I get to the treble strings, I just alternate index and middle finger. And I use that kind of third stroke where the thumb stays behind the fingers. Then when I get back to the D string, back to the thumb. And that's the notes you really want to get familiar with, and that's one of the best ways, just to kind of get it all under your fingers. And also, don't be afraid to work those musictheory.net exercises on the previous video really hard. Now, the next example is using the same notes, but we're going to play it in what's called ascending thirds. Now, a third is just a fancy word for a skip. So it's like we've leapfrogged the note in front of it and skipped a note. So instead of going E to F at the beginning, notice we're going from E to G. And then we play the F and skip the G and go straight to A. So it's kind of, I like to call this kind of exercise 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So the notes that we had in the previous example, you can see 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Here's how this one sounds. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then we can do the same thing in the next exercise, but start on the high note and go down. So 2 steps backward, 1 step forward. Here we go. 1, 2, and ready, and. So that's very good because it makes you think about the notes in kind of a more advanced derivative way than just directly in order. Okay. Now this next example is what's called a C major scale. So we're going to play essentially all the light keys on the piano, or C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, in a specific order, and it makes this sound. So you want to memorize this scale and the notes really good. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4. So one thing you'll notice about that one is you'll see some notes that look like quarter notes, like the first one, but the stem or the note head is not filled in; it's left empty. That's called a half note, and it gets 2 beats. And you'll also see a different type of rhythm at the last note, which is a whole note. That's like a half note, but without the stem, and that gives all 4 beats in the measure. Let's play that one more time, and I'll count the rhythm. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Off. So notice I just sustained the count that I came in on, and then if it was like a half note with 2 quarters, I would go 1, 3, 4, right? And that's how we want to practice that. All right, the next example is a C major scale in a third. So now we have this 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and on the way down, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, but using the C major scale. Let's learn this one. 1 and 2, and ready, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the C major scale sounds like a C major scale because it has a particular pattern of whole steps and half steps from its original note. Now, we can trace that pattern up one string and see that very easily. The pattern is 2 whole steps and a half step, then 3 whole steps and a half step. So 2 wholes and a half, then 3 wholes and a half. If we start on the 3rd fret and follow the pattern, we can add quickly to get the next numbered fret. So here's C. Let's go a whole step up. So 3rd fret will turn to 5th fret. Another whole step will turn to 7th. A half step will give us 8th. Then 3 more whole steps. Whole step, whole step, whole step, and then finally a half step. So if we played those same notes in there, we get that C major scale. So that's what a major scale is. It's just a pattern of whole steps and half step that we base a lot of music off of in our culture. The major scale is kind of like the staple scale. That's what they call it, the major scale. It's the major one that we use all the time. Now, contrasting with that is something called a minor scale. So if you start on the 6th note of a C major scale, or any major scale, so in this case, the 6th note of C major would be A, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But we'll start down an octave on this low A, so we have more room to work with. If we play from A to A with all the same notes, a scale that sounds much different, even though it has the same note names in it. It's because it emphasizes that A. And those intervals of half steps and whole steps are kind of different when we're thinking about the A as opposed to the C. And that's why it sounds different, or the scale is a more somber of a sound. It's called the natural minor scale. Let's play that with a metronome. Now, this is a really easy scale because it's just the ABCs. So if we count the ABCs, it'll be good. All right, here we go. 1 and 2, and here's A minor, and 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Now the next scale is going to be a kind of what's called an altered version of this minor scale. It's going to be called the A harmonic minor. And what we do here is we take the 7th note of the scale, in this case the G, almost back to A, and we turn it into a G sharp. So what a sharp does to a note is it just raises it up a half step. In this case, it just makes it 1 fret higher, which is easy to remember. So instead of an open G, we'll have a 1st fret G sharp. And that's how this one goes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice all those elements of the left hand keeping close to the fretboard and playing with whatever finger that the fret is, all works really good for these introductory left hand exercises, just like in the technical exercises. All right, now here's that same harmonic minor scale, but in thirds. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, all the way down, 2 steps back, 1 step forward. Here it is, 1, and ready, and so you got that low G sharp on that second to last note with the 4th finger on the 4th fret on the low G. That makes sense because the G on that string is on the 3rd fret, the low E. Right, there's a G, so the G sharp will be on the 4th fret. See, 1/2 step higher, same thing as a sharp. Okay, now these next exercises are a little trickier. One thing to start doing, once you kind of have individual notes down, is to start playing 2 notes at once. And in this example, we start on a low F, and we just kind of go up the natural notes that we saw in C major, but we play it with that 3rd away. So that skip note that we had a while ago, we're going to be playing those at the same time. And to be able to do this, you may see certain notes on a different fret. For instance, if you look at the 3rd note in this, or the second, look at the first note in the second measure of this exercise. You'll see an A and a C. The issue is we can't play that A open anymore because we want the C above it to sound with it. We can't play them on the same string. And that's why you'll see the A there is placed on the low E string. That way we can open up to the C on the A string and play both notes at the same time. Now, this is a kind of a newer concept, but it's one thing that you'll need to learn eventually. So this is a great exercise to kind of learn how those notes begin to overlap. Here we go. Let's try this exercise in thirds. Here we go. And notice I've given you some fingerings above the notes. You'll want to follow those. Here we go. 1, 2, and we're ready. Here's the first one. F and A, G and B, A and C, B and D, C and E, D and F. Here's E and G, F and A, G and B, A and C, B and D, C and E. Here's D and F, C and E, B and D, A and C, G and B, F and A, E and G, D and F, C and E, B and D, A and C, G and B, and then you could go back to the beginning, right? One thing to focus on this exercise is getting the connectivity between adjacent notes. So just taking like 2 notes at a time, like the first 2 and going back and forth between the first 2. That's a really good exercise. Then the next 2 notes. And we can see how the second finger slides from the B to the C on the second and third note there. And then the next 2 notes. The second measure. Playing really slow like this is a great way to work on your technique by using your ear. You want to connect the notes as close as they can get connected and kind of examine the technique to make sure that they can be played that way. Alright, here's the B and D to the C and the E. You can see how I'm working now, right? And then the C and the E to the D and the F. And that kind of broken down work is actually how I discovered the fingerings that I wrote in for this. By taking every note adjacent to each other and just working them in like a pair and trying to make them very connected. What I'm really doing there is, I'm really trying to smooth it out. And by doing that, I end up finding the best fingering to do that with. All right, let's do the same thing in A harmonic minor. So all the G's now will be G sharps. Here we go. 1 and 2 and ready and. All right, now instead of playing thirds, we can play what's called their inversion in sixth. So you'll have the same pair of notes that you might encounter with the thirds, but they'll be in what's called inverted. So usually when we had an E above, we had a G above it, but now we'll be thinking from like the top note. So for instance, on the previous exercises, when you saw a C, you might be thinking of the E above it, but in this case, the E will be below it. So all the notes will be essentially 6 spaces away from each other. That's what they're called sixth. Okay, here it is C major in sixth. 1, 2, 3, and... Yeah, these thirds and sixths are really great exercises because you hear a lot of these common harmonies in guitar playing, thirds and sixths especially. All right, here it is in the harmonic minor. So every time we get to a G, we'll get the G sharp. There we go. 1, 2, and ready, and... So a couple of things to keep in mind when you practice the thirds and the sixths. You want them to sound at the same time, so both notes are on time. You'll want to use a thumb for the low note, and then especially if it's the bass string, and then like the index finger for the one above it. And then if you get on 2 treble strings, you can use the thumb and a finger, or maybe you use index and middle finger together. You should try that. So getting the notes to come out at the same time, that's important. Number 1. Number 2, to get the notes to come out with a similar volume, a balanced volume, so you can hear both notes clearly, is also very, very important. So you got the at the same time, same volume. You want the notes to be even rhythm, so they want to be right with the metronome, the half notes. Each one of them gets 2 beats. Also, make sure the tone of each note. So you don't want one note sticking out, not because it's not too loud or too quiet, but because maybe it has kind of a funny sound. You want to work with the right hand technique and find just the right touch and experiment until you can find, the notes are very even. That's what makes them sound very good. And then the last thing that you want to be aware of is how connected every note is to the next note, right? So, the best way, once again, I'll say this over and over, if you learn this skill now, it'll pay you off so many ways as you continue to learn literature, is you want to really practice like adjacent notes, like back and forth. So like on these harmonic sixths that we just did, I may just play the first note to the second note and then back and forth. Just trying to get every time a little better tone, more even volume, make them be right on time. Now I move from the second note to the third note, do the same thing. Notice I'm never moving far away. The fingers are always close and prepared to play the next thing. So use these tips and they will help you get done with the rest of this section.